All right. Afternoon, folks. I think we are up and running. Let's get everything loaded, and I'm going to have to do some explaining on what we're doing today. But I see Sourlad and Iconic in the chat. What's up, folks? Let me flip everything over to the drawing stream layout, and let us get started. And I'm going to turn on BGM. We'll have the standard playlist running in the background. And I had my regular alerts muted while I was getting everything loaded, but I did see Sourlad resubscribed. Thank you very much, Sourlad. It's much appreciated, my dude. Iconic says, hi, Raku boy, me be. Okay, so we are going to be looking at mecha concepts today, and we are going to be doing this with a program I've never showed before, and it's not one I've really thought to stream with because we're going to be doing something that I haven't done in a very, very long time, but I need to kind of explain how this thing works and what it is. So usually on art streams, I have done kind of 2D drawing type stuff using Clip Studio Paint, formerly Manga Studio. That's what you folks are used to seeing, right? Today, we are going to be venturing into the third dimension. And we're going to be doing that with some ideas for mecha concepts because I've been kicking around some ideas for a project, and I should have done this before I started working on some stuff this week, but I forgot that I have the ability to do this because it's been so long. So first off, the program we're going to be using today is called Rhino. You can't see the top of the title bar because it's cut off a little bit.
Money on my mother mind. Cop 5 haircuts at the same time. White gold pants, jet ski made of wine. Foie gras bust of Albert Einstein. Get money.
Hey, Sourlad with the gifted sub to Iconic. Very kind of you, Sourlad. Thank you. Iconic, enjoy the gifted sub. There's some unique emotes and stuff that you'll get there. I'm working on some other stuff that will be added to the overall emote list. I don't know when it's going to be done, though, so stay tuned. But yes, big ups to Sourlad. Okay, so this program again is called Rhino, and this is a 3D modeling program. It's been around for a long time. I started using it in 2000, and I have not really used it for 3D stuff in a really long time. So we're going to be kind of dusting the rust off on some stuff that I know how to do. But people use this program to do CGI stuff. And I don't know how much of an industry standard it is now. A lot of things people make in this program, they import into animation programs like 3D Studio Max or Maya. And I don't know how many people use this, but they're still updating and maintaining this program. It's incredibly powerful. I'm not super good at computer or CGI modeling, but I do know how to do some interesting stuff when it comes to what we're going to be looking at today. And so to folks, a real quick demonstration of how this works compared to everything else I've done. When you work in Rhino, you work in perspectives. Kind of think of it like drafting, if you've ever done engineering or drafting work. I've never done engineering or drafting work. I just wanted to learn this program ages ago because it looked cool. But we have different perspectives that we work in order to create whatever it is we're going to be drawing, modeling. And right now I'm in the front perspective, so I'll real quickly demonstrate how that works, and then I'll actually show you how I'm going to be doing this. It's a little bit complicated, but it'll make sense once we get underway here. So if I draw a shape here, this is just a curve. It's a two-dimensional curve, exists in two-dimensional space, but has no mass or form to it. And for the sake of illustrating here, I'm just going to turn it into a flat surface. So think of this like a sheet of paper in the shape of a circle. You can not worry about the curve itself. We have flat circle. If we use shade to show us what it actually looks like in a pre-rendered space, it looks like a flat circle. Let's turn that off. if we change perspectives and go to the right, this flips us around to the right perspective, 90 degrees essentially. And if we look at the preview, we basically see nothing because we're looking at it from the side. It's two-dimensional, not three-dimensional in this perspective. And so you can't see the circle because it's perfectly flat. It's like a thin sheet of paper looking at it from the side. But if we go to perspective, which gives us a three-dimensional perspective, and we turn on the preview, now we can look at the thing in 3 dimensions. And what I'm doing is I'm just rotating the camera. Maybe a two-dimensional thing's not the best example. Let me try this. It's over here. Sphere. This will be a better example. So, three-dimensional sphere. Okay, that's a ball. Front, side, kind of indistinguishable because it's just a ball. But if we go to the perspective, we're essentially looking at the thing in 3 dimensions. And so the way people typically use this program, as far as I don't know anybody else who uses this. But what people typically do is they'll create things for concept work or to import into other programs, and then they'll render the finished or prototyped model, whatever it is, so they could show off proof of concept or whatnot, and that basically creates an image of the final product, right? So just like you have a final product for something you draw, the render feature, which is this little blue circle up here, might be tough to see my cursor, but the rendering takes whatever perspective that you have in your active window here, and it creates an image rendered out of everything in whatever dimensions. And so the whole point of this is we're going to try and use these sets of tools to create some mecha concepts. And again, I haven't done this in a while, but it's not terribly complicated in the way I've kind of learned to do it. And this will be an interesting experiment because, again, I've never done this on stream before and haven't actually done this hands-on in many years. But I think we can actually get some better concepts than if I was trying to draw stuff on paper. I'm not a mecha artist. I wish I was. I have a lot of ideas, but this is hopefully going to be the next best thing. So what you'll see as I'm drawing here is you'll see me jumping around in perspectives. Jumping from probably front to right and then checking things out in 3 dimensions. And so let me kind of demonstrate. We'll do maybe kind of a more basic type setup and kind of explain how all this stuff works. Oh, looks like we do have a bot in the chat. I could take care of that, or Saralad, if you are armed and ready. Let me see here. Got it. Begone bot, as Iconic says. Okay. So let's try something a little bit basic to kind of get the rust off on this. Again, it's been a while, so I got to remember how some of these commands work. But what we're going to do is we're going to create shapes in the right perspective. The side perspective doesn't really matter. I think right will be fine for this. And we're going to take this flat curve that exists in 2-dimensional space, and we're going to basically extend it into 3 dimensions to create a block. And again, this isn't probably the most elegant way to do modeling, but for mecha type stuff, I've found in the past that this works fairly well, and we'll see how the results turn out. So this command up here, which, oh, you can't see some of my toolbars. Ah, that's annoying. It's because they're popped out. Don't worry about it. You'll see the results of the command. That's what matters. So let's see. We will do this. Okay, I need to make sure I'm using the right command. Normally it gives me a center line so I can make sure I'm keeping things symmetrical, but I think it's close enough for this for purposes here. So to kind of demonstrate, sorry, like I said, I did the thing and it didn't do the thing. Maybe we both hit the band at the same time. So we took this curve that looks kind of like a little sideways teardrop and extended it horizontally. And if you look at the perspective, that's what it looks like. Now I wanted it capped, so I'm gonna have to do that again. Or maybe not. Maybe I can do it manually. So it's extended it into essentially a hollow tube in 3 dimensions. And I can cap the end by using that surface command again. And now it's solid. It's not on the other side, so we can use a command that's very useful in a program like this called mirror, which flips something over an axis symmetrically. And by doing that, now we have something that's completely filled in, looks like a block. And what we can do for the sake of kind of getting the rust off is mess around with this particular part. This is going to be like a body, like a torso, an upper torso part. And what I like to do is smooth it out so that it's not just flat or sharp edges all the way around like a block. I want to make them rounded. And so, we need fillet surface. The radius, this is going to have to be a little bit of an experiment. Okay. A little bit tough to see here because of the wireframe, but what we did was we blended in the edge so that now it's rounded on the corner instead of being sharp. And now we want to take that and do that for this lower part. No, not that one. This one and this one. There we go. Now I gotta see why it's not blending up on top. It's actually pretty close. Might be able to work with that. And this is kind of practice since I haven't done this in so long. Iconic says, so you got like a list of concepts, or you got some on their brain, your workshop here and now? Probably the latter more than the former, depending on what I'm going to do and work on stream. Sometimes I'll come in with an idea of something that I know I need to get done for a project, and other times I won't. You'll find I'm very bad at planning. Okay. So it might be a little bit tough to see here. But what we've done is we've kind of blended the edges together all the way around the front. And I think the radius might be a little high, is why it looks a little bit kind of rough, but you can see it blends in there. might have to turn the radius down a little bit. Let's try 0.5. One thing this program does, which would be different from some of the other ones we've seen so far as how I use it, it does do things in specific measurements. I don't really draw that way, but if you wanted to do it more like a drafting program, or you wanted to say, let's say you're designing a gear, right? You can have the entire layout and the grid here be by millimeters, and you're measuring it out precisely, because you can take things created in this program and export them to a 3D printer. I don't have one. If I did, I'd get even less done than I do now. The things modeled in this program can be sent over to 3D printers and printed. I've had someone do that for me before. It's kind of neat. All right, let's see if this radius is enough. Okay, that's not bad. All right, I have an idea on how to make this probably a little more interesting, since I can eyeball stuff all day long, but it's probably not going to be the most interesting content to watch versus actually seeing something get fleshed out. So let me finish the top parts of this, and I'm going to switch strategies here. Iconic says, I'm the same way with my fan fictions. I have vague outlines in my mind and then swing it from there. Yep, that's very accurate to what I do a lot of times. It just depends. Like, the reason why I'm working on this today is because originally I wanted to work on something for an upcoming project. Whoop, wrong one. But again, I forgot I have this tool at my disposal, so I didn't do this. Oh, hey, Crusher's here. Hey, Crusher. Oh, thanks for reminding me. I meant to turn the redeems back on for the other stuff, since it's just me today. I was going to do that before the stream, then I got wrapped up into setting this program up, so let me fix that. And before you redeem the beat, since I forgot, I will give you one for free, so don't waste your points. One sec. Okay, should be on now, but like I said, I'll give you one for free, Crusher, since I forgot. So you can save up for later if you want. Let me mute this. Or not mute this, let me pause BGM. And actually, let me save my work real quick. I do not want to lose what I'm doing. Okay. Headphones. All right. I had this idea kind of kicking around in my head for a little bit, so let's give it a try. All right. Let us continue. We got a hydrate redeem from Sour Lad. Thank you, Sour Lad. All right. So let me do this for kind of at least the preliminary part, so you folks can see what I'm doing. I can mess around with just this main body part all day long, and it'll probably mean absolutely nothing people looking at it. So instead, I'm going to go into the side perspective and add in some details that I know I'm going to need
Money on my mother, mine.
going
Got 5
forward.
haircuts at the same time. White gold pants, jet
And
ski
then
made of
we'll
wine.
flip between
Foie gras
perspectives and
bust
actually
of
start
Albert
fleshing
Einstein,
stuff
got
out.
money.
I won't do it one part by part. Instead, we'll do it kind of in major sections. I'll look probably a little more interesting. Hey, and Sour Lad back with gifting another sub to Crusher. Thank you, Sour Lad. You must have got one fat paycheck or something, but much appreciated for the gifted subs. Crusher, enjoy the sub emotes. I always have to remind myself of what else you get for subscribing, but again, thank you so much, Sour Lad. I will say though, do not, and this goes for everybody, not just Sour Lad. I've said before, do not throw money at a streamer unless you can afford to do so. I know Sour Lad is also a working lad, so do not feel compelled to throw money at any streamer, not just me. If you are on a budget, if money's tight, it means enough that you folks are here hanging out and chilling. So again, do not ever feel compelled to throw bits, subs, or anything like that. I know some streamers out there do encourage that, and I think that's kind of scummy. And so you will not see that from me. Your personal well-being is always above entertainment. We just do this to entertain you. Some of us do it for a job. I don't. And so that's just my little soapbox. I think Wazzy has said something similar to her folks as well. Okay. So for folks who might have jumped on midstream, what we're doing is mapping out some mecha concepts using a three-dimensional modeling program. And so I'm working in different two-dimensional perspectives as I add some details to this body piece that I'd like to do here. And then what I'm going to do is flip over to 3D when I actually start turning them into solid pieces, and you'll see how I kind of fit them where they need to go and kind of mess around from a three-dimensional perspective. So we're doing it kind of in steps. It's a little bit different from working on paper where you can actually see the realized drawing in real time. With this one, we actually have to do all the construction and then turn it into like a draft mode in order to see what I'm doing. So it'll be flipping back and forth. Starlight says, I'm very responsible. I would hope so. If not, then we will be paying you a visit. Iconic says, money could be tight, but your streams are tighter. We strive for stream tightness. That is true. But, again, never prioritize entertainment over life urgent priorities. I don't think I have to explain that to any of you folks, but I gotta say it just in case. Okay. So what we can do here, if we go back to the block, and again, turning it into a draft mode. You can't see any of the curves I was drawing because they're just flat curves that exist in 2 dimensions. They have no mass to them. And so what we want to do is turn them into 3D objects and then position them in a way where we can make them be part of this overall body piece that we're working on. And so we'll do this one first. This one is going to be kind of like a panel on the side. It's not going to be a real thick block. So this one, let's go straight extrusion. Is it going to do that? No solid by default. That's kind of annoying. But if we turn that into a solid and then slide it over to be on the side instead of in the middle, because it's aligned with this center green line, which is center axis that I'm working off of. It's how I can tell where the middle essentially is to keep things symmetrical. If we look at draft mode, now we have this panel on the side. And so we're going to use this basically to create all sorts of details we're going to add to this thing. And again, it's going to seem rather tedious because it's a lot of the same commands over and over again, but it's going to build out the details on this thing, and slowly but surely the intended results should materialize. I don't know how far we're going to get on this today. This is an experiment, but we will continue. We can delete these center ones once we're done with them. Crutcher says, I don't have money often, but when I do, it's usually less than $5 or it's survey money. Here's the thing, my bills are covered by disability checks, so I'm fine spending what little I have supporting my favorite streamers. Well, as long as it's within reason. Make sure you eat first. That's all I gotta say on that. Sourlad says, you guys are great. I'm just giving back with all the gifted subs I got. And Sourlad also says, just by showing up to stream gives a lot of support. And that's true. That's why you'll probably hear a lot of us say, just being here and vibing is more than enough. And anyone who says otherwise is being greedy, in my opinion. That's really interesting. I wonder why it's not giving me that center guide. Well, for the sake of the exercise here, it probably won't matter too much. I could be approximate, since this is a concept. It doesn't need to be a completely formalized product. Let's see, where's difference? Let's see that successfully delete out. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. Okay, that's fine. I was going to try and make an indentation here, but that's not entirely necessary. Pressure says I'm a little drunk and sappy, but I like Raku in his streams. He's made my beatboxing better, and I think of him as a friend. Also, sorry for clogging chat. You're not clogging chat, Crusher. You're good. I really do appreciate the kind words. We try and create a good chill environment here that people can hang out in. Oh, well, that just straight up merged those together. I don't want that. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, we'll just leave that there for now. Starlight said you guys are the best and make life worth living. Hope to keep being friends with you guys for a long time. I hope so too, Sour Lad. I know it's difficult on the internet when you only know so much about people, but you know, as a person who doesn't really go out at all, I know meeting people is challenging, but having people interact with on things like streams does sort of fill that void a little bit. So I definitely hear you there. Okay, I could have sworn there was an easier way to do subtractions, but they might only work on fully solid objects when you basically cut something out of something else, and that's fine. And we don't really need that for this. So what I want to do here might be a little bit tough to see. I want to take the panel here and around the edges, going all the way around like this. So we're going to use this command, fillet surfaces. And will it let me do that all the way around? Could have sworn there was a way to do multiples with this. If we went radius point. 0.25. I think 0.25 millimeters is the default unit of measurement here. Let's see. Actually, let's do this. I hope no actual 3D modeling people show up to the stream. It's going to be very embarrassing if they see what I'm trying to do here. There we go. That's what I wanted. A little bit tough to see, but we rounded the edge off on this upper part right here. That's what I wanted. On the topic of the environment and vibe here, Crutcher says, "Hell yeah, friendo, I love you because you're super chill." Well, that's good. Again, I've been told by some people that I sound really sleepy a lot of the time, but I have kind of a naturally chill voice in default setting. So if I was trying to go like straight YouTuber mode, like, "Hey guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Wow, I'm so wacky," I couldn't keep it up, and it'd be very, very obviously fake. You guys wouldn't like that. And I know some people on the VTubing side definitely have more of a exaggerated character, and that's not a bad thing. And the fact that they can do that and keep it up is impressive to me. I decided when I was going to do this, I wasn't going to do that because it'd be disingenuous and more work. I'm not an actor, even though I am getting into voice acting now. I'm not an actor by default, so trying to put up like a character that's completely different from the way I normally am would be very difficult to maintain, and I don't think it would sell too well. People would notice. All right, let's see if we can do the same thing on this front part. Nope, not that one. That one. Let's go for middle. That is not middle. It's a little bit difficult to work into perspectives like this, but I'll get used to it. Starlet said, "Rocco has the vibe of a bartender enjoying his job. 10 out of 10 voice." I'd say it's probably more like a DJ on a smooth jazz channel. Or maybe like a bartender at like a chill lounge bar as opposed to like a busy club. 'Cause that's definitely not chill. Whoop, let's do this one. I don't know why it's doing that edge down there. Crusher asks, is this your first time 3D rendering? No, it's not. I used to do this a lot, a long time ago. I don't use this program, Rhino, this way anymore. But because I needed mecha concepts for something I'm working on now, I figured it'd be an interesting test to try and do this on stream. And also kind of force myself to relearn a little bit. Because again, I used to do this a lot. I've been using this program for about 20 years. Just not for 3D stuff. Alright, let me see if I can get this thing to fill it properly. There we go. So next, we'll move on to this part. This is like the lower body joint connecting the upper torso to the lower torso. Again, I understand this is going to be probably a lot slower than stuff I normally do, but hopefully it'll still be interesting. Directions, both sides. Oh, I could just do that. Oh, yeah, that would probably make it a little easier for me to be symmetrical. Basically, both sides means when you're taking these flat curves and extending them out sideways, instead of doing it one direction, it's doing it from whatever central point in both directions at once. That's would have been more useful. So if we rotate our camera around here, you can see the underside of the shape. Oh, and it didn't cap. Alright, I gotta do it again. I wish I could default enable that, but I don't know how. But we're creating this part underneath the body that's going to connect it to a lower torso. Crutcher says, I agree with Sour. I think Raku has a chill voice, and as an autistic person, I enjoy Raku's voice from a sensory POV. Well, that's good. I have had people ask me in passing if I would do ASMR, and I don't think I could keep up that type of thing for long. I don't have the mic for it, for one. But it is interesting that people have asked me on more than one occasion if I would do ASMR. I'm like, I don't know. I don't really have a lot of interest in doing that type of content. But I probably could if I needed to. Okay, let's actually do this. We want to put a part here that's going to be like a shoulder joint. This thing's going to have kind of a narrow body, but that's okay. Again, for the sake of practice, it doesn't really matter what shape this thing takes. So we'll do an oval. This program has set shapes that you can use, or you can draw them by hand. But if we do something like this, it basically creates an oval that you can stretch to the right radius and whatnot, and it's set. You don't have to worry about being exact. Sour says, Raku reminds me of Spike from Cowboy Bebop. I don't think my voice is that smooth. Well, as far as even keel and tone, I think you're probably right. So we take this shape, apply the same commands, and it'll do both sides by default, but it won't do solid. I have to tell it to do that every time. That's kind of obnoxious. It's okay. Now taking a look at our render preview. You can see we've taken this sort of peg part and now it's sticking out, and we're going to connect a shoulder piece over here eventually. But before we do that, I want to keep working on some additional details on this chest piece before we completely move on. I was thinking maybe some fins or parts on here that will give it kind of more texture than just a solid block. Thinking of the mecha type things mecha types of content we've consumed so far, right? Your armored cores and the like. That's kind of the inspiration for this particular practice session. I'm not a big Gundam person. I have watched some, but most of my ideas for mecha comes more from maybe Eva going back a while, Gurren Lagann, Armored Core for non-anime type stuff, Escaflowne. That's a pretty old pull for you kids out there. Let's see. Maybe we could do it this way. We're working in the top view briefly here. Let's see if this particular command will work. We want to use a command called project. And we want to project this curve onto... Oh, I don't know if that's going to work. Can we do multiple? Nope. We cannot. All right. Okay, well, that's annoying. It's because the curved surface that slopes down here, it's got more than one part to it. You can only project onto one thing at a time. I can show what that looks like over here, though, I think. Let's try it. Another thing to keep in mind, since I've been using this program for so long, it's been updated several times, and we're on version 6 right now, which I think is not the current one. I think they're up to 7. Last time I did this in 3 dimensions was probably 2 iterations ago, so I don't really know how they've changed some of this stuff. I'm just trying to fumble my way through it. All right, let's try project here. And we'll put it on the right panel. All right. I think it worked. Oh no, interesting. The way it used to work is you would take, let's say you wanted a curve and use project, it would basically paste it onto whatever surface, and then you can extrude something out directly from that surface instead of doing it from like the middle axis. So if you had something that was curved, it would take the entire shape and it would basically paste it over a curved surface. So when you extrude it out, it's not just flat. Did not do that here, so that's not really going to help. Good to know. It's okay. I was thinking about putting maybe kind of a curved fin type extension that goes up before the shoulder. Crusher says, highly recommend Witch from Mercury as it's kind of a mystery type deal. I know that's been recommended a couple times. I think Ryura recommended that one too. I know there's a lot of series out there that I need to watch. Let's see if this one works a little better. There we go. I need to be careful because it's snapping onto points as I'm moving the curve around. It'll snap some that aren't aligned with the central axis and it'll skew the shape if I'm not careful. But as far as the fins, a little subtle. Maybe I can move it up a bit, but it adds kind of a ridge along the trailing edge. I think the head would be up here when we eventually get there. Crusher says I stepped on a nail today. That's no good. Oh, Crusher got a tetanus shot last month. Whew. That's no good. Rusty or not, don't step on nails. All right, let's start thinking about where we're going to go from here. Again, I know we've been working on this one part for a while, but when it comes to modeling, again, it's slow progress. So I don't know how far we're going to get on this today, but we will see. I'd like to at least get a torso, shoulders, and maybe a head done. And we'll see how that happens, or how that goes. Alright. We need this thing to be solid. So just be like a neck connecting piece. Well, that's not bad. I'm going to leave that there for now. It probably is not going to be that visible if we stick a head on top of it. But to kind of show what's going where, we've got shoulder piece, top piece. We can even add in some additional details like taking the central part and adding another one right next to it. Maybe something slightly smaller. Like so. And to kind of show off what I was talking about with the commands to kind of work on symmetry. Sometimes I'll do this at the very end, sometimes I'll do it step by step. It doesn't really matter for the sake of what we're doing here. But if we take these parts that are on the side panel and we go to front view and use this command mirror, we copy them across the axis symmetrically, and then there's no eyeballing. It does it exactly according to the axes. And now look, we've got perfectly symmetrical elements on both sides. Very handy and saves a lot of time. I would not be able to do what I do with this program if that command wasn't there. Or I could, and it'd be a lot more annoying. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. Crusher says, painting fell off my wall and it was canvas stretched over compressed wood or something like that, so it was held together by nails. Didn't bleed too much or go through too much. Well, that's good. Still, you wanna be careful. Okay, so we've got a lot of details here on the torso. Let's put something on the back. I don't know what this thing's gonna have on its back, but let's give it some back piece to give it kind of more dimensions. Maybe something's going to be a little bit wider. If it was going to have maybe some boosters or something on the back, it'd probably be attached there. Like so. And we could even go in and round the edges out on that too, so it's not just flat like a block. Hey, pint-sized Kiwi's here. What's up, Kiwi? Kiwi says, did I hear Mecha? Was it the Mecha signal was shining in the sky, Kiwi? But welcome, and to answer your question, yes, I am doing some Mecha concept work today. We're testing out a new program here on stream, and watching me fumble along as I try and remember how to use it. So welcome. Hopefully it'll be an interesting ride. That's not what I wanted. That's interesting. It's not letting me select the top part of the surface. I wonder why. Oh, maybe because that's not a surface. That's the line. Whoops. Well, this one up here. There we go. Kiwi says, oh good lord, it's 3D. That's better than I could do. I can make below average Minecraft models, and we don't talk about the one thing I made in Blender. What's this Mecha stuff for? We're working on some concept stuff for an upcoming project of mine. I don't know if anything I use here is going to be part of that, but I was telling the folks in chat that it would have been a lot easier for collaboration purposes if I had done this to map out some rough ideas instead of trying to draw it on paper. Digital paper, that is. But I forgot that I have tools that can do this stuff, so that's why we're doing it now as practice. And as far as Blender goes, this program is, I don't know if I'd say more powerful, but it's easier to use than Blender because its interface is a little more intuitive. But this program is not cheap. Again, I've been using it for 20 years, and I've owned a copy of its license for, I want to say, 10? Maybe around 10? And it's not cheap. But fortunately, I don't ever have to worry about buying it ever again. But kind of like a Photoshop type deal. As a professional industry type program, yeah, this thing's not cheap. It's okay. But yeah, I tried using Blender, and its interface kind of frustrated me. I know some people who use it, and they're really good with it. Comparing it to this, since this is what I learned how to create things in, I struggled with it a bit, so that's why I just went back to this program, since one, I own it, and two, I know how to use it. Kiwi says, also speaking of mecha stuff, I'm starting robotics class tomorrow at school. I kind of wanted to make a giant Beyblade that has legs like a hex bug, because my friend is into Beyblades and it'd be funny. But just have one with legs, but he isn't on board with the idea. Not many can appreciate the power of bays, I suppose. All right, moving on to shoulders. This one, let's go with kind of a more simple shape, and then we can kind of round out the curvature of it using the tools that we've been messing around with so far. There's a couple ways we could do this. Using the extrusion commands to create something in a 3D space is one way. Another way we could do this is with actual physical models. I showed that off earlier with creating spheres. You can kind of do that and kind of manipulate the things like you would manipulating a curve in a Photoshop or a drawing program. I guess I can show off what that looks like. It's not what I'm going to do here because it's going to look dramatically different. But if we sidebar real quick, and if I use the sphere command to draw a sphere, again, perfectly round ball that exists in 3D space, right? But if we take this, and I think the surface command is called rebuild. Where'd they put it? Just type it in. Yeah, there we go. We can rebuild it with control points. And then if we turn on control points, all these things are basically parts of the mesh of this 3D object, and we can take them and we can manipulate the shape of the sphere itself. In 2 dimensions, we can kind of push, pull, and change the shape of this thing in real time, like we're basically manipulating a ball of clay. And if we jump over to the 3D perspective, that's what it looks like. And you can see wireframe mesh because this is an actual wire mesh object. But we took the ball and we pulled out some parts, pinched some other parts. So you can manipulate things in this program the same way, which is kind of interesting. I don't normally model that way because it's a little less precise. I used to when I first started learning this program. A lot of the stuff I made was very blobbish. A lot of blobs. But it is kind of a neat thing to do. You can also manipulate things in 3D, but you got to be kind of careful which way you pull stuff in order for it to actually change according to what you're trying to do. Like so. Pretty interesting. But for this, we'll just use the extrude command. Again, kind of eyeballing where everything is for now, which is fine. And I think I want to round the edges off on this to make it more smooth. It'll still look kind of blocky, but it'll have a rounded off edge like the rest of the segments we've done so far. It'll match. So we'll do this. And that. I wonder if we can trim this. Yes, we can. Okay. Forgot we can do that. We can trim off the excess part so it's not just sticking out. Okay, remember that for the future. Right, that's another side. And we just jump over to the other face of the shoulder piece, and we do the same series of commands. And we could trim out the excess parts. It's doing the exact same thing because it's the same series of surfaces, just on the other side, symmetrically. Let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. I did see the discussion about the history of Beyblades in the chat. I just have no frame of reference since I never watched the show. You folks are more knowledgeable than me when it comes to the legacy. All right, let's save this. Thinking maybe we add something that looks kind of like a vent. I'm gonna try something. Maybe I can get the command to work properly this time. We'll see. First we'll extend this out. Make this... Oh, whoops. What's wrong with this one? That's not gonna work. There we go. Extend this one out. Make it not quite the width of the shoulder. Now it treats these like solids. So what I've been trying to do is subtract them. Basically, take two of them and cut one from the other. Let me see if I can get this to work. I'm trying to eyeball it as close as possible. Difference. Oh, did it work that time? It worked that time. All right. I was trying to do this before, and maybe the surfaces I created weren't working properly. But by creating a smaller version and subtracting it from the bigger one, it creates this vent. And I think that's kind of a neat effect. Because you can create recessed things and things that look like they're not just pasted together, you know, with kind of blocky function. So let's see if we can do that with the shoulder too. Because what I'd like to do is create a recessed part of this section here to show like the arm coming out, maybe right around here. So let's see if we can get that to work. We're going to join all these together so they're one solid object. Or attempt to, maybe not. That's fine. Let's see if we can use the same difference command to basically take this larger section here, I'm mousing over, and cutting out a smaller version to create indentation, just like we did with the vent. Let's see if it works. Nope, didn't like that. It could be because we're trying to do it with multiple surfaces. I know the program gets a little picky when you do that. So it might not work the same way as with this other one because we rounded all the surfaces first. Which is fine. It'd just be a cool effect to have. Yeah, no, it's not going to let me do that. Alright, it's fine. Now everyone in chat's talking about bay wheels. Might as well be speaking Greek. Okay. So, developing more of the shoulder part here, I want to put something on the face. Like maybe some more of these panels to kind of match what we did over here. So what we could do to save some time, because I like saving time, being efficient, we could use this same panel. And I'll show off another command here that'll make this a little bit easier. But not if I miss all of the edges to it. That doesn't help. There we go. So if we make a copy of the panel, and actually I don't need to use any advanced commands. Working in 3 dimensions, this is the top view right now, looking straight overhead down at this body piece we've created. If I use rotate, and turn on ortho, we can flip it 90 degrees. And then now we can use this panel over here. Maybe scale it down a little bit. Or we could do more than one. And now all we have to do is put these things in place on the front of the shoulder. Wait, no, not that one. And then just like that, these little raised shoulder panels are there, and we didn't have to redraw them from scratch. We just took them from the body, flipped them around, and we stuck them on the shoulder. And what I can do is copy these and flip them across the axis to put them on the back panel too. And now we have these little round panels on both sides. And we didn't have to do it from scratch, just using the commands. We did that, which is pretty handy. Oh, I see why. The curves are showing up on the wireframe. That's fine. I don't think it's really going to matter for the exercise today, but it's good to know that's why those lines are there, because the curves show up on the draft render here. Okay. Let's put a head on this thing. It seems kind of strange to have this mecha type floating around without any sort of head. We can't have that. Maybe we'll make it curved, kind of to match the body. And what we're going to do is we're basically going to take the same techniques we made the body with and the shoulders and create some details on the head. And I've got a couple ideas on how to add some features to this thing to set it apart from the rest. Okay, we definitely don't want this thing to be too wide. Yeah, that's fine. Oh boy, there's gonna be some commands I gotta really learn how to do if I'm gonna do this correctly, but we'll see if I can figure it out. So what I've done is I took this curved line, I drew a curve over this block for the head, and then I used it to cut apart the entire surface using that as a guide. So you can think of it kind of like laser etching a line and then cutting something apart. So we've cut this what's going to become like a canopy for the head. We cut it completely off, or separated it rather. And so now you can see it's completely detached. We cut it off using that line as a guide. It's a pretty powerful technique. Split allows you to use a cutting surface to split things apart, either two-dimensionally or three-dimensionally. It's pretty handy. But I need to figure out if it's blend surfaces. I have to do a little bit of experimenting here. I got your hydrate iconic. I'm drinking a combination of, well, it's not Guff Fuel. I guess it's technically Gamer Sup's product, but not like we really make a distinction here. I will say, after trying Jay Schlatt's titty milk flavor, it's got kind of an odd aftertaste on its own, but it seems to mix with things pretty well. Like I mixed the titty milk with mango, and it's kind of an interesting combination. I think I like better than just the flavor by itself. Nobody take what I just said out of context. Okay, surface. Blend surface. I think this is what we want. Oh boy, I gotta figure out how it works. Can you only do... that's not right. Oh, is it gonna make me do it section by section? Oh, that's annoying. All right. Okay, I can work with that. We only have to do it on one side. And I think we can mirror. Yeah, okay. Let me mirror this and hopefully it'll be clear what I've done. Okay, that works. It's a little bit hard to see. But what I've done is I essentially created this kind of canopy thing. I increased its size, and then I blended the edges of the separated lower part and the upper part so they're connected. So it's a little bit tough to see, but they're not hovering on top of each other. They're actually connected by a surface. So that's what this part is here. It's basically taking the edges and creating a patch in between them so they're connected. And it's good to see that still works the same way, because that would have been really annoying otherwise. And now I can see maybe we can try rounding it off. Oh, I'd like to just remove that. I don't know if it'll let me though. Nope. That radius is too high. I kind of like the way that looked though. We'll go 0.5 again, I guess. Yeah, it's a little less noticeable. It's not perfect, but I think it'll work. Rounds off a bit. There's this corner part. Oh, there we go. Okay, that looks better. Trims it off a little bit. Okay. So we'll keep adding some details to the head. I like the idea of putting some panels on the side to give it less of a flat look. We can delete the original reference curve. We don't need it anymore. Maybe a little bit too wide. That's better. And I'm not going to round that one off. We'll keep it square. Give it kind of like an angular look and like an accent on the face rather than have everything be smooth. Iconic says, this is coming along great. Oh, thanks. Iconic. Appreciate it. Like I mentioned before, doing this type of drawing and modeling is very time consuming. To do an entire mecha piece, start to finish, head, upper torso, lower torso, arms, legs, would probably take me about 7 hours doing it this way. And so this is kind of meant to show everyone how the process works. And we'll see how far we can get in the next maybe less than an hour. I've got to go run to a function. So this is kind of like a preview of the process, since I needed to get some stuff together for another project. But back in the day when I was doing this more consistently, I would be here working on something for literal hours. I draw with like an actual pen and stylus much faster than I model, but usually modeling takes a lot more fine details and stuff. People out in the field who do this, days to create a fully rendered model. So people who work in like Pixar and like the CGI houses, those folks are nuts. It's so much work. But the end product is worth it. Okay, what I want to do is add an antenna or like a fin. I'm gonna take a page out of the book of stabilizers from our armored core builds. How functional is it? I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but I care that it looks cool. So here's how I'm going to undo this. We're going to create the actual extension and make it really narrow. And then I'm going to create a texture on it. So we'll do that. Now, with the extrusion. Sarlat says my brain is getting fried by all of the technical speak of the stuff I'm making, or is it because of the Beyblade discussion? You could be honest. I'm not going to be offended if what I'm doing here is confusing, because I know it is. Okay, that's not going to work. That might actually look alright. Basically, we're creating a frame support for this fin right here. Sarlat said lots of lines and specs and different perspectives. Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about all the technical aspects of what I'm doing. All you really need to see is the stuff that I'm creating when I do these rendered 3D perspectives. So let me take those lines off. Oh, I think that's it. As you can see, a little bit subtle. Maybe I need to move it out a little bit more. But there's a kind of like a layered sandwiching of a metal piece that's around this antenna part. So it's not just a single solitary thing sticking out. Now it's got some thickness to it. Here, I can do that. That'll make it a little easier to see. There we go. Now for this piece on the back of the head, I think I'm just going to add some accent cylinders using circles that are extruded out, maybe like right here and here. Oh, we can even do it like this and not have to move them into place. There you go. Looks kind of like bolts. The one thing I'm doing a lot more, just so people on stream can see kind of what I'm doing here in 3 dimensions, I don't normally go into render preview and turn this thing into a draft when I'm doing these normally, since I can see what I'm doing. But I figured so people can see how it changes the actual model. That's why I'm doing it here, just so you can see it. Normally I wouldn't be doing that. I'd just be plowing through. But based on that, I think that's a pretty functional headpiece. Doesn't need to be anything that elegant for what we're doing here. Now we got to put it into place on top of the shoulders. I think we're going to have to angle it a little bit differently. Whoop. There we go. So to kind of build out the entire upper body piece here, I'm going to mirror the shoulder over. Don't need to do it right now, but to give kind of a more complete picture of what we've modeled so far, I'll do it this way. And again, this is pretty elementary as far as modeling goes, but if I was going to create a proof of concept thing for like a commission, which is kind of why I'm doing this now, just to practice in case I need this later, what I would do is I would create a real rough render of what it is I needed from a concept perspective, and then give that to the commission artist and say, hey, I need like a mecha drawing. Here's some ideas for something I'd create, and turn this into a fully fleshed out drawing or something. I don't know any 3D modelers, so it would be basically taking this and turning it into a pen on paper digital type drawing. And again, I wish I remembered I can do this about a week ago, but it's all right. It doesn't really cost me much time. And basically we would follow the same process going down for the limbs, arms, legs, or lower torso, like lower body, then the legs, all the different extremities, feet and whatnot, and basically construct everything in bits and pieces. And so let me see, since I should be able to just pull it up. Let me show you folks what a finished piece looks like, because again, I wanted to demo how this works, but this particular one I'm not going to readily use for anything at the moment. But let me show you what a fully realized concept looks like, if I can find it. Give me one sec. Got to go back into the archives. Okay, this is an old one from a long time ago. I want to say probably a decade almost. But this kind of illustrates what I used to do with a lot more competency back in the day. And so this is kind of like a chicken leg mech. Maybe something you'd see in a Mech Warrior game versus like Armored Core. But if we turn on the render, this one has a lot less of the smoothing. It's more blocky. But this is what the fully fleshed out thing looks like. And I'll actually show you the render in a sec, because I think this thing has color assignment. And so what you'd probably do with something like this, if you weren't just doing a straight concept render and creating an image for the sake of creating an image, you would probably take this thing and dump it into an animation program like 3D Studio Max or Maya and rig it with an actual skeleton so that you could have it walking around and, you know, doing stuff. If you're putting it in a game, putting it in a movie, you know, what have you. This piece of software, Rhino, is primarily just for modeling and draft rendering. You can do some pretty high-level renders with colors and whatnot, but it's not really meant for real high-end stuff. There's some ray tracing programs that you can get in here, but overall it's meant to build, and then you import the models into other things or 3D print them or whatnot. Let me see. All right. Does this thing have color assignment? I don't think it does. This was done in probably 3 iterations of this program ago. Ancient. I can try and render it and see what happens. Worst case scenario, turns out flat. Yeah, okay, there's no colors on it. But what you can do as part of the rendering, I'll demonstrate this here, it's fine. Just won't save it. Oh, let's see. Let's say we wanted to give it a single base color scheme. Maybe like a camo-ish flat palette. No patterning, no texturing, just a flat color palette. If we did that and then we render it, it applies color to everything, and the shadows are neutral. You can mess around with lighting and shadows in this too for rendering, but for this, it's basically taken this green color and applied it over everything. Another thing we can do, let's see, where's it? We gotta go custom. We can add textures too. And I could have sworn, I haven't done this in forever. For textures, there it is, assign texture. Let me make the base color lighter. We'll see if this actually works. I haven't done this with the rendering in forever because I don't use this program this way. No, that's not what I want. I can never remember if the texture replaces the color assignment or is supposed to go with it. We can do, maybe the bump map will be a little bit easier way to illustrate what I'm trying to do here. Okay. So for those who don't know development side for graphics, a bump map is basically a layered effect on a rendered solid that creates an actual physical texture. A regular applied texture just applies it over the shape like a painting. A bump map actually creates physical variations in the surface. So I just pulled one out of my list of bump maps of a really rough kind of ripply texture. And so applied to this mech, it gives it the illusion that the skin is, you know, bumpy, which it's essentially done because that's why they call it a bump map. Let's see, can I render preview? I wonder if this will work. No, that doesn't do anything. But you can see how it kind of takes that and basically gives it a bumpy texture. You can do a lot with the render work, but it's not as powerful as some of the other programs. Let me see. There might be another one. We're going way in the archives. You folks are basically getting a sneak peek into Raku's old 3D artwork. So hopefully that's interesting, because I haven't worked on this stuff in almost a decade, probably more than a decade. Let's see this. What was this one called? I gotta remember what my naming conventions were. Give me one sec. I've got a pretty large archive I gotta sift through to find this. I don't remember what I called it. Oh, maybe it was this one. Yeah, this is the one I was thinking of. This one was done later than the one I just showed you. And I actually did 3D print this one. There we go. Similar design, like a reverse-legged walker type. But the designs on things like the guns, the paneling, it's done a lot better. You can see that smoothing effect done more effectively. It's what I was trying to do in the example I was showing you folks earlier. But I did get this one 3D printed, and it did actually print decently. I think my friend or my coworker's 3D printer definitely struggled a little bit because of how this thing is set up, but it basically printed it from the feet up, and it did work. And so that was kind of a neat experiment as far as taking a design and creating a physical model or replica, as it were. And I like the kind of vents and ports on this one. There's a lot more variation to the texturing. You could see even on the paneling, there's slots and like exhaust vents all over the place. This is kind of more along the lines of what stuff looked like when I was doing it more or less full time. Looks like something you'd seen, again, like a Mech Warrior type game, or maybe even like an Armored Core type setup. And this one, does this one have colors? This one does have colors. I wonder if it'll render properly. Yeah, okay. I think it was missing one of the textures, but it doesn't really matter for the sake of showing stuff off. Let me fix the window. Resize it so you can see the whole thing. It's interesting that it keeps cutting off. There we go. So using base color assignment and not messing around with textures or bump mapping or anything else, you can tell the software each physical piece of whatever it is you're rendering, make it this color, make it that color. And so when it creates the render window and the rendered image you see here, it's taking the color assignment and matching it up. And you know, the fully rendered image with kind of neutral shadows and lighting that we see here, it has that color assignment all built in. And so this is what it looks like. It's very flat and there's no dynamic lighting or, you know, ray tracing or anything like that. Those are plugins that you can buy, or I think they're paid plugins you can install in the program to give it more advanced render options. I never use that stuff. That's why I didn't bother. This thing was expensive enough as it is. But the idea that you could basically create fully fleshed out proof of concept type stuff is pretty fun. I kind of want to get back into this, but it's a lot of work. So I don't know if I will going forward. But I wanted to show off this process to folks on stream today because it's a little bit different than stuff I've done before. If I end up spending some more time studying and getting kind of back in the swing of 3D stuff, I might bring this type of content back in the future. If people find it interesting, by all means, let me know. It's just slow, right? I could do this all in a vacuum and just plug away at the program and not talk to you folks, but I don't think that'd be very engaging. And there'd be not a lot of progress, especially if I have to stop and explain what I'm doing. But I don't know. We can talk about that in the future. If we go ahead and load up the one we were just working on. So for this one, I don't think we're gonna get much further without me needing like another hour and a half to stream. But the idea for the lower body, maybe we can do kind of like a rough series of things here as like a placeholder in case I work on this in the future. So here's how I would normally do it if I wasn't kind of navigating or narrating rather for like chat. I would basically be roughing in all the sections of each part of the body. And so this is lower torso. Things got a bit of a dumpy. But just using the curves and flat surfaces or flat objects, I would be saying, okay, we want to have things here and here. And rather than do one shape, create a 3D thing, do another shape, do another one, I would basically map out everything all at once. And so before we completely wrap up for today, maybe I can kind of rough draft out what this thing would look like. And if we work on this in the future, we could always revisit this and then have sort of a template for what we wanted. Sarah, that said, reminds me of Bakugan. And Iconic says the Horde reminds me of Bakugan too. I have never seen. Wait, Bakugan? That does sound familiar, actually. Like, that was a TV show, wasn't it? What I'm going to do here is rough out shapes for legs. You can see how if I was doing this as basically kind of like a primary start to finish, it does technically map out faster because I'm not doing this piece by piece. I'm basically like a primary setting all the details one by one. I think the legs are a little bit too large. It's a little better. We can do something like reestablishing scale and whatnot later. This is more of a rough outline of what the rest of the piece would look like. So it said plastic balls you roll and they pop into designs or something. That sounds familiar. Not something I ever saw. Just doing a quick Google search, the product looks familiar, but this was probably way after my time by a good 30 years. But they were a merch thing you could buy, and I guess there was a TV show and like little rolling ball creature things. Sounds like a typical Japanese merch line. Right here, I'm doing kind of a rough primary outline for the arm. Now, hand-wise, I have no idea what I'd do for hands. Doing hands is a nightmare because if you wanted to do articulated fingers, you basically have to do it section by section. I have no idea if I would do that for something like this because it's concept work, not fully rendered project files. So I wouldn't need to have it, holding a gun. I could just say, here's what a gun design might look like. And, if I was handing this off to an actual artist, let's say, here are the details, give it a gun. But if I had to do a fully fleshed out design, then I'd basically have to do the articulated fingers section by section, and that would be pretty challenging. Zarlat said early 2000s, 2010s for Bakugan. I believe it. I haven't been part of like a merch product craze in a long time. But it is interesting how they kind of crop up every once in a while. What the next Pokemon or Pokemon killer, and seeing whether or not that actually happens. And again, we're working in 2 dimensions here, but if we wanted to approximate scale-wise where we'd be putting the arms and the legs and whatnot and lower torso, this is how I would map out everything initially, and then once I have all the flat curves mapped out and in place, then like we did in real time, kind of piece by piece, I'd go and start creating the 3D versions and putting them together and then compositing the entire kind of base position. I guess if this was going to be used as an asset for a game, I'd want to set it kind of like a T-posed default position, but for just proof of concept, it would just be kind of like a neutral standing pose, arm at the side like this. And then once everything's been put together and fully realized, like we saw in the old project I pulled up briefly, that would be the render that I would send off to the artist to say, okay, here's the rough proof of concept design, and what can you do with it? Zarlat said they thought Yokai Watch was the next Pokemon killer. Yeah, that is true. I heard Yokai Watch is really popular. I don't think it was popular enough to topple the Pokemon Empire. Because it's still there. But from a consumer standpoint, nothing says in writing that all the franchises can't coexist. It just means your kids will go broke faster. Or your kids' parents will go broke faster. All right, before we wrap up for today, I want to show off a couple other things this program does, just to kind of give you folks an example of what people do or do with a software like Rhino. So let's save this as a new blank. We don't lose our work. So this command I believe is unchanged. I haven't used it in forever. But let's say we wanted to create an object off of a static curve like this. I believe the command is revolve. And this is, again, flat two-dimensional curve exists in 2D space. And we want it to take a 360 revolution around the y-axis, which the y-axis is vertical, x-axis is horizontal, z-axis is third dimension, I believe. But by taking that command and just taking that curve and spinning it around the axis and creating a 3D object from it, we've created a lamp, or like a lamp stand. You can see it in the black. That's the original curve, and the command spins it all the way around the y-axis to create a fully three-dimensional object. And that's one of the first things I learned when I was learning this program. It's really neat. It's not terribly complex, but if you wanted to mess around with object creation from a static 3D curve, one command does that in one shot, which is kind of neat. Another command when it comes to manipulating objects that I think is pretty handy, if you need to create a lot of something, there's polar array, which takes an object and based around a central point, like a center point, it copies it around that central point however many times you tell it to copy. So I did 6. It took the little lamp thing and using this middle of the axis 0, 0 as the reference point, it copied 6 lamp things around that central point. So now if we go into the render, I don't know what you really do with this particular combination of images, but let's say you wanted to take it and turn it into like a wheel or, you know, spokes on something. This program just does that. It can copy things around like a polar degrees point just with the click of a button. It's incredibly powerful. Likewise, if you wanted to manipulate a 3D object, let's say we wanted to take this lamp and change the way it's oriented, we could use a bend command to bend the 3D object in a couple directions with some limitations. We have to be careful because as soon as it starts to kind of sandwich into itself, it'll pinch and distort. But just using bend, we've now distorted the original 3D shape that we created by twisting it or bending it on an axis, essentially. There's a twist command too. I never used that one, but I believe it functions the same way. And there's a whole bunch of other ones that I never use. Oh, I guess the last thing I'll show off. Briefly earlier, I showed you folks how to take the sphere and kind of manipulate it using all the control points. You can do that with any created 3D surface or 2D surface for that matter. So if we turn all those control points on, then we can stretch or deform. Get rid of that curve. We take the lamp and we can mess around with it in the same manner, just by stretching or pushing the different points. And the end result, we have created Vampire Hunter D's hat. Well, anyway, that's kind of a real quick show off of some of the commands that this program does. Again, the way I've been using it on stream is probably one of the most elementary and basic ways to create things in 3D, since that's the extent of what I know how to do. But the program itself is extremely powerful. It can do quite a bit in 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions, and I think that's why it still exists as something people use out in industry. I don't, again, know how common it is. The few 3D modelers I've talked to do know this program. They have seen it before. Some of the stuff I was doing with it that I haven't really shown you folks. Kind of surprised some of those people I talked to because it was very different from what the regular 3D community does, but we won't really get into that today. But yeah, I think because I have to go pick up some pizzas and take them somewhere in a sec, I think we will call that a drawing stream. Again, this was an experimental format to show you guys some stuff that I worked on before. That's, again, outside of what we normally do here. I will think about whether or not I want to do more of this in the future, just because it tends to be slower content. I know it's not as sexy as some of the other stuff we've done, but there is potential for me to need to do this stuff more in the future. We'll see. But let me pause the BGM and we'll see if anyone I know is online. We can raid and spread the good vibes. So let's see. Oh, Truck is online. They are playing Deep Rock Galactic. I am not normally streaming at the same time as Truck Sama, so we'll go say hi to them and see what's up. So let me go ahead and go to outro. So I got to figure out my schedule for next week. I think I'm going to be streaming tomorrow. And I think we'll be starting a new playthrough of something. I'm not going to give away what it is, but it should be pretty interesting coming off the heels of Killer 7. So we will definitely check that out. But until then, thanks again for hanging out and bearing with the new stuff. And I will see you folks in the next stream. Have a good rest of your weekend.